My name is Mamin Galube. I'm a freshman at UNC and I'm a survivor of gun violence.
My name is Samuel Scarborough and I'm a survivor of gun violence.
Please try to find a closed room on the upper floors. Once again, if you are out in the open, please try to find a closed room on the upper floors. The code to the graduate study carols.
My first ever experience with gun violence, I was having lunch with a friend literally 10 minutes before going to the building where the first shooting at UNC happened. And we received a notification that there was an armed person on campus and we had to stay. And at first it didn't really hit me that, oh, this is an actual thing that happens here in the US. So I didn't take it too hard, but then the longer we stayed locked up in Lenore, because that's where we were for like safety reasons, the longer we stayed there, the more it dawned on me that this is an actual serious problem and there's an armed person on the loose and this person can just easily enter Lenore and just start shooting up the place. I wasn't really that scared that first incident, but then after things had died down, so like 2.5 weeks later, I was working at my former place, which is Alpine Bagels, and as I was in the process of taking an order, my former manager was yelling at somebody who I assumed to be a customer at the time. And next thing I heard was my assistant manager shouting for everyone to get down. And I didn't understand what that meant. So it took me like a good minute to actually process what was going on. So I remained standing whilst everybody was ducking down. And my coworker literally had to yank me to the ground to say, hey, cover up, there's somebody with a gun. And in that moment, it really hit me that, okay, I'm currently in a place where there might be a shooting. I may or may not survive. What do I do now? And I started running. I had an asthma attack as I was running, but that didn't stop me. I just kept on running. I didn't know where I was going. I was still pretty new to the whole UNC area, so I didn't really know the buildings. I just remember reaching the road and running down the road, and there were cars behind me hooting. And I just kept on running and running and running until I literally couldn't. And I sat down on the road and I just started bawling my eyes out. And in that moment, the only thing that was going through my head was, I could have died. What happens if that was my time? I didn't say anything to my parents. I didn't accomplish anything yet. My life could have just been cut short. That's the end of Mwemi's story. And one of the RAs saw me, and then she came and rushed and she asked what's going on. I was in the building, he could have shot me. And I just kept on shouting he could have shot me, he could have shot me. And I left my bag and my phone and my laptop in the student union where the actual event happened. So my head is how do I even call my dad and tell him, hey, this has happened. I'm okay now, but this could have happened. And at that point, it hit me that I did not want to be in the US at all. Everything that I was fresh off the plane, first time in the US, and this is how I'm introduced to the lifestyle here with shooting, and it just didn't sit well with me. I was scared. I felt like I didn't belong. It just wasn't the right thing. And in that moment, I was filled with so much regret. And when the RA gave me her phone to call my dad, when he picked up the phone, I just started yelling, saying, I want to come back home. I want to come back home. I could have died. I want to come back home.
Yeah, so I've actually had a couple experiences with gun violence. The most notable is probably recently was August 28th, 2023, Chapel Hill. Dr. Zija Yin tragically passed away after one of his students shot and killed him, and I want to say it was Caudill Laboratories around Wilson Library. But also I have a brother who goes to Hillside High School, that general area, and one of his community members was shot and killed right off by campus. And then also there was a gun-related incident. This wasn't a shooting, but there was a gun-related incident at Chapel Hill a couple weeks after the August 28th shooting. And I'm very close with the person who had the gun pulled on them at Alpine Bagel Shop in the student union. So although I've never had a bullet come my way, I know a lot of people who have lost their lives to gun violence, and I have been in situations where guns have been fired and people have lost their lives and have been harmed in numerous ways. It was definitely very depressing. A lot of, just the fact that a man lost his life for an issue that is so preventable, that was very depressing. A lot of campus events that were supposed to go on, because of the shooting, those things were canceled. So it created a very rocky start for my college experience. Some of the things that I intended on doing, stuff with the Black Student Movement, there were some events going on, some events with other affinity groups and organizations. Those things didn't happen. And it was a general vibe at this campus, like we felt that loss as a Carolina community. And on another level, as someone who was around like the gun violence prevention sphere, around this work, coming into North Carolina and coming into the University of North Carolina, it's one of those things where it's like, this is something I've been battling at home. I come to this school that's, a town over, but UNC Chapel Hill doesn't have that rep of being a place where gun violence exists. So you think, you're away from it, but it happens within your first 2 weeks, and then you have 2 incidents related to guns within your first month of school here, and it's very unsettling, but also very grounding in a way, understanding this institution's very intimate relationship with violence, not only gun violence, but also other kinds of violence, which I'm pretty sure we'll talk about further in this discussion.
Let's jump right into it.
Yep.
So you're involved in lots of gun prevention, gun violence prevention on campus. Can you talk a bit more about that kind of work? Absolutely.
So I work with March for Our Lives, UNC primarily, but I also pitch in where I can for Students Demand Action, UNC. I work with community members in Durham. I served on the Community Safety and Wellness Task Force, where we were trying to find ways to address community violence without the involvement of law enforcement. So thinking about ways we can address violence from an abolitionist framework.
CNN and the other didn't. One tragedy deemed worthy of national attention, while the other was pushed aside like it never happened, rendered completely invisible. In fact, this is what we've seen across the board. North Carolina's Black and Native American communities die from gun homicide at a rate 7 times higher than their white counterparts. North Carolina's Black and Native American communities die from gun homicide at a rate 7 times higher than their white counterparts. I want that to sink in. We demand that the General Assembly stop ignoring the death and suffering of marginalized peoples.
And so when I started this work, with March for Our Lives. It started with an Instagram DM. It happened after the August 28th shooting, and it was a rally. I went out to the rally, met some people that were with Students Demand Action, but then I saw March for Our Lives posted about having a meeting, you know, that next week or whatever, and I was like, let me jump in and get involved with folks that are trying to do something around this situation. And so that culminated into an action that took place at the General Assembly. We gathered outside. We had a rally of about 50 to 100 people, I want to say, mostly students. A lot of people cut class because we saw something like the death of our professor as something that is unacceptable for an institution that purports itself to be at such a high standing, let alone just an institution in general. Like, no one should have to face that, but especially for an institution that tries to pride itself on excellence and prestige, we're like, okay, the things aren't adding up. So we decided to go up to the General Assembly and take matters directly to our state legislature, which is primarily controlled by Republicans. They have a majority in the House and the Senate.
I'm calling out all Republicans in the General Assembly. Stop playing politics with our lives. And to the Speaker of the House, Tim Moore, my brother, you are 52 years old. Grow up and act like it.
Yeah, it's been a challenge so far, but through this work I've met a lot of different people who care about gun violence prevention for a variety of different reasons. And it has really opened my eyes to a lot of other struggles that exist that I know of through studying history, looking at theory, stuff like that, but tangibly looking at it, how different forms of oppression fit into people's lives, how it affects their everyday lived experience is something that I've been able to really grapple with since first semester.
So I took like a week and a half. I was in the hospital, and I think that's when I fully managed to process and heal, because I met amazing people whilst I was in the hospital, people who I still talk to this day. And when I left the hospital, things just turned. I just became super happy. I was enjoying my stay in the US. I managed to finish the semester strong. Now I'm currently enjoying my semester here. I'm fully happy that I'm back in the US, and I think I'm a huge version of myself from the UN. Yeah.
What keeps me fighting are the people that I see around me that are waking up every day and are like, you know what, the situation we're in right now, this is something that we can change and that we must change. What keeps me fighting is realizing all the people who have lost loved ones to gun violence, understanding that their pain, their trauma will never go away. And as long as they're still around, there's always going to be that loss. There's always going to be that loss we feel. Specifically at Carolina, there's always going to be that feeling of loss with Dr. Yin not being here. There's always going to be that feeling of safety being under jeopardy with these multiple incidents. And so having those things, these traumatic experiences, in a way transform my experience more towards action. I know for other people, trauma affects people in different ways, but for me, it's moved towards, this is something that I've experienced and I do not want any other Carolina student to ever experience.
Thank you.